Hello, and welcome to another segment of Strategy Sunday. This is brought to you by More Than a Protest in partnership with VIPLA. I'm Dr. Jasmine Austin, and I'm your moderator for today. I am an assistant professor at Texas State University, and I study interethnic and organizational communication. And I'm excited to bring this panel to you today. This panel will discuss mental health in Black youth and how can we have, or what the strategies are for us to ensure that our young Black youth grow up to be young or successful adults. In this panel, we have 5 panel members, so I'm extremely excited to see how this discussion goes because they are extremely bright, along with 3 additionally amazing panel members. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves, starting with my brother, Dr. Julius Austin.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Julius Austin. I am a clinical therapist at Tulane University. I'm also an adjunct professor at Southeastern Louisiana University and Southern University, A&M College in Baton Rouge. I'm also a private practice clinician. I'm running an online practice as well as an in-person practice.
And hi, my name is Natalie Bunner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Lafayette, Louisiana. I'm of Thrive Therapy, a new private practice for children and youth and pediatric focused professionals. I am also a early childhood mental health consultant working with owners and teachers and parents related to children under the age of 5.
Hi, everybody. My name is Destinee Jackson. I am a licensed mental health professional supervisee. I am under supervision towards my licensure to be a licensed clinical social worker. I currently work with the Crisis Stabilization Program as a crisis counselor, and I also work in a program as a counselor as well.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Quanaisha Smith-Epps, and I am currently a clinical doctoral student at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology at Washington, D.C., focusing in clinical psychology and forensics, primarily in the juvenile population. And I am currently an extern at the Multicultural Clinical Center in Alexandria, Virginia as well.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacki Frazier. I'm a mental health Arizona, changing the world, mobile behavioral health services, working with families and youth. I'm also a positive product of the system.
Awesome. Thank you, panel members, for introducing yourselves. See, I told you we have an awesome panel for today. So once again, if this is your first time joining us for Strategy Sunday, welcome. If this is your second time or third or fourth time joining us, welcome back. All right, I'm going to start our panel off with a main overarching question. So the first question is, what are the main issues when it comes to mental health in our Black youth? And I'm going to pass this question along first to Ms. Natalie.
Hi. Some of the issues that we're facing with children of color is that they are underrepresented in society and their voice is not being heard with the level of consistency that might be happening with their majority counterparts. So things are occurring in their lives, in their homes, in their environments, and they are not given the space to explore how they feel and their thoughts related to that. And so they feel shuttered and they feel as though their voice does not have the same amount of value. And so they learn that one of the ways to get the attention that they need and to be heard is acting out in ways that we deem to be unacceptable. It is not uncommon for children to experience trauma. We call, in practice, we call it little T's and big T's. And we tend to focus on the big traumas that children face while negating the impact of little traumas. So little traumas could be something as simple as, the lights being cut off due to lack of payment or having to be displaced due to not being able to afford the rent or being in a food desert. Those kind of things have a huge impact on how children are functioning and coping in society. This year has been consistently challenging for all of us, but especially for our Black and brown kiddos being stuck at home due to shelter in place throughout the country with limited resources at home to keep them grounded, keep them focused, keep them engaged in health activities. So those are some things that we have seen with our children throughout the country that has impeded their progress and their ability to kind of cope and create like healthy emotional and mental health processes during challenging times.
Awesome. Thank you, Natalie. I definitely agree that not being heard is one, and also offering those safe spaces to express your emotions and even to be able to feel those emotions and vocalize those. Next, we're going to have Julius.
Hey, yeah, so if I can just kind of piggyback off of what Ms. Bunner was saying, I think that there's an isolation that happens, within that experience that children face. And I think that isolation from my clinical experience creates this lack of, a solidity with their identity, but also even their culture. So there can be this separation between the self and then the culture and then the other, right? Which leaves students or children, especially children of color, kind of free falling, with hardly any idea of who they are in the midst of dealing with the light bill, and the lights being turned off, and the stresses that some families face. But even if those stresses aren't apparent for that particular student, that isolation is still present, and feeling isolated within a community. There's something odd about being isolated among other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's hard for kids to voice that, right? I think it's hard for kids to have the tools or the capabilities to even, one, acknowledge that that's how they're feeling, and then two, if the acknowledgement even happens, how to communicate their feelings coherently to an adult.
Yeah, Ms. Jacki?
Excellent point, Julius. My experience of working with our youth, especially our male youth, especially our Black and brown males, is especially hard for them to communicate to when they're being isolated in their own home. Isolated to the point where mom is so busy working 2 and 3 jobs that they can't even communicate with them and don't know how, because she's getting ready to go to the club. I mean, real talk. These are real issues that we deal with in our community. So learning to teach them and meeting that client where they're at, so you can empower them to be able to open up in any way possible that they can, whether it's through their music, whether it's just through modeling positive behavior. It will change the whole picture of just basically demonstrating those positive moves for those individuals. So thank you, Julius. That's very important. And Miss Natalie, about communication, being able to break those barriers down.
Destinee?
Hi, yeah, to piggyback off of everybody, I think that one thing you guys touched on was trauma and kind of like the trauma responses, and thinking about, I think anxiety is a big thing that children are dealing with right now, especially when you're talking about just current climate, with the coronavirus being just so prevalent in social media, and people are making jokes about it, but then there's still like this feeling of uncertainty that accompanies that. So I think that is like very difficult for people to deal with, especially when you don't really have the tools to kind of like verbalize your anxiety and recognize how to cope with it. And I think that's highly affecting our children right now.
Yeah. Quanaisha?
I just wanted to piggyback off of something that Destinee said when she just mentioned the word trauma and learning how to recognize it. I think it's also important to note that as a community, we don't really have a definition of trauma, the things that can be traumatic and the things that are affecting us as a community, or even, you know, that may affect the children more. We kind of normalize it. We joke through it. You know, we say, oh, things could be worse and things of that nature. So I think it also starts there as well, because we're not even acknowledging that the things that can be very traumatic do have an impact on adults as well as they do as children. So it's like, if it impacts us as adults the way that it does, we can only imagine what it does to children, which goes back to what Dr. Julius Austin said when he just mentioned just, I guess, that aspect of kids and them being able to even relate to adults, like, hey, this is how I feel, or this was affecting me. If we as adults don't even really know how to sometimes put words to what we're feeling, and if we kind of joke through things, just imagine how children feel when they, you know, they're not even at our level yet, where we have more so advanced, and then, you know, we're able to kind of decipher between what we feel, and then we kind of choose to, I guess, compress it and deal with it in whichever way that we can. But it's like, if we have that mindset and outlook on things, just imagine how children are, not even being able to comprehend and then express that to someone else. So I think that's also like something that we do have to address and, you know, come to terms with, so we can be better than that.
Awesome. So what I heard from this panel so far, as what are the main issues, I wrote down 3 main issues. The first one is voice and expression. So how can we help foster voice and expression? And that goes with, of course, communication. The second issue I noticed was anxiety as an issue. And that also goes with the first one, because when children and when we are feeling anxious, sometimes we don't know how to voice that anxiety, or even voice where it stems from. And the third issue is recognizing trauma. And it helps, I think that's one of the main things that comes from either a parent or from a mental health professional, is what are the trauma, where did it stem from, and how can we approach this so we can become better. So I want us to discuss these 3 different problems, and we're gonna first start with voice and expression. So going back to the panel, and I'm gonna start with Julius first. Going back to the panel, when it comes to voice and expression, do you have strategies to help parents foster voice and expression in their youth, in their children?
I mean, the first strategy would be to get help, right? So to seek out their own counselor, their own work, right? Because I think as adults, so I can just speak from my experience, right? But also from my clinical experience, what I've seen clinically is like there's this survival mechanism that kind of, you know, it doesn't allow us to, you know, voice our traumas, because if we voice our traumas, that makes us vulnerable. And if we're vulnerable, then we're susceptible to being taken advantage of, you know, being lied to, or what have you, right? So it's, you know, we protect ourselves by not voicing our traumas. And I think that kind of trickles down, and I think somebody else mentioned this in the panel. It's kind of a trickle down effect to the kids, right? So the kids get this message of, yeah, you can't cry. Hey, hey, do not show that type of emotion. And my words is very specific. Do not show that type of emotion. Like, that type of emotion is not good for you, right? Especially if you're going out into the world. So I think, you know, with regard to like the voice, I think strategies could be one, you know, parents, you know, get their own help to kind of discover some of the blocks that they put in place with regard to how they communicate their emotions to their own kids.
Well, 2 things, you know, one related to what Dr. Julius said about being able to express that appropriately, and what does that look like with children, coupled with what Ms. Epps said about, Smith-Epps, said about the trickle-down effect when children are watching what adults are doing in their space, and that is modeled as appropriate response to stress, then they're getting 2 very strong messages. One is, this is the way that I handle specific stressors because that's what the adults around me are doing. And 2, it's entrenched when you handle it any other way and the adult in your space says, no, we don't do that. You know, we don't, that's not how we handle that. No, we don't cry about that. And that starts at a very young age. at the same time connecting the reality that due to generational crises and generational trauma, some of those lessons were learned decades ago, and they have protected whole communities to some degree because they have learned that it did set them up as prey in certain environments, you know? And so trying to figure out how to acknowledge that reality and yet help them understand that there are other options to self-expression that brings about healing and restoration, you know? Because from a clinical standpoint, I've noticed that with working with children, and I've been working with children for over 20 years, is that what is consistent is trying to overwhelm a very entrenched understanding of how we cope with crisis. When you realize that there are healthier ways, more restorative ways to deal with stress and deal with crisis, but you have to overwhelm generations of unhealthy coping responses that served them well for a reason, you know? And so it's really kind of like a dance that you do with when working with children, is helping them understand, like, I see what you have been doing. I understand why it probably worked for you, but there are healthier, more effective ways to cope and express how you feel, and we will accept that as well.
Yeah, I want to step in and ask a follow-up question. I think we're doing a great job of discussing socialization, which is the behaviors and communication styles that parents may use that help show their kids how to behave. So what is appropriate behavior based on mimicking their parents, right? And so I'm wondering, if we're thinking about old coping strategies and we're thinking about new coping strategies, can anyone think of a specific example of what's something old that we need to stop doing, and what can we replace it with as something new? All right, we're going to start that with Miss Jacki.
Yes, so some of the things with Dr. Julius and Miss Natalie, far as the generational, I like to focus when I work with my families, with the parents and the kiddo, is I start off with play therapy, which what I will utilize is genograms. The genogram, it don't have to go just exactly how the genogram. I might have the kid utilize his favorite artist, or it may be, you know, but you know, that way it allows the child to be validated, his voice to be heard. And then therefore I will go into mom's favorite artist. Hers may be Keith Sweat. Okay, well, okay, what did Keith Sweat do? I think that is very important to meet the client where they're at. Once we identify where they're at and meet their needs, whether it be small to medium to large, we're meeting the need. And they see that we are paying attention and that we're there and we're compassionate about what we do to help them. That way they can build rapport. They're able to build rapport. The kid becomes more comfortable with opening up, and then we can get to those wounds. We can start putting some alcohol on it. And then next thing you know, we put a little Neosporin on it. You know what I mean? But the love, and when they see that and the parents see that, then they start to heal as well. They're going to start looking for other resources. Have those resources available for them anytime and anywhere where they can help. You know, it takes a village. So we do wraparound services. Thank you, Dr. Jasmine.
Yeah, Destinee?
Also, to piggyback off of what you were saying, Ms. Jacki, I think that emotional intelligence plays a huge role in how we communicate. So pretty much letting, having a healthy perspective on emotions really helps kids learn to, one, be accepting of other people and learn boundaries, and, you know, be able to communicate better as children and as they transition into adulthood. I think that that's really important. And so one way to do that, a specific example, working with children, a lot of times people have this tendency, if a child cries, to come and coddle them and try to stop them from crying, stop letting them feel that emotion and things like that. And I think that, of course, you know, you're going to have that urge, that desire to want to protect your child or protect a child from feeling those feelings of sadness, but it's also important to show them that, you know, sadness does come. And sometimes you're going to have to learn how to kind of regulate yourself to kind of cope with this feeling. And feelings are just, you know, they're not facts, they're just feelings. And to let them come and pass and just have this healthy perspective on them to help kids learn to communicate. And I think that that's one thing as parents, educators, and other mental health professionals, even we can even do a better job at doing that and allowing kids to feel how they feel, whether it's anger, sadness, jealousy, pride, because there's so much students.
Yeah, that is a great point, Destinee. Just allowing your kids to feel how they want to feel, and also allowing them to identify those emotions and work through those emotions. Because if they don't learn as they're young, then what are they going to do when they're adults? All right, Julius?
Yeah, so Ms. Jackson mentioned an important part about emotional intelligence. I think from my experience, right, clinically, I see a lot of, I've worked with kids before, but my experience with that is that emotional intelligence is important, but it's also unique to the kid, right? So like, you know, I have a son, I have a 3-year-old son, and the way that my 3-year-old son not only emotes, but communicates those emotions are a lot different from anybody else's 3-year-old son. You know, so when you're looking at specific strategies, right? Sure, anger, I get anger. That's a massive umbrella, right? I can see it in the face. I know it, you know, when the snacks aren't given at the prompt moment, I know when the anger is coming, right? But like the way he communicates it is, it's a unique thing that only happens for a moment in between me and him, right? So if I can understand, if I can be intelligent with regard to his emotions, then I can understand how to communicate or even predict those emotions when they come up, and then kind of preemptively have a conversation or even an acknowledgement of, okay, so this is what you look like, but this is how you communicate when you're angry. And to have the wherewithal to do that, as opposed to saying, quit crying, like cut out all that noise. You know, like that, what that does is it just roadblocks the emotions, and it doesn't communicate to the child that, yo, it's okay if you want to express yourself, but listen, there's a way to express yourself, especially if you want to have your needs met. And this is how you do it.
I want to open up a follow-up question to the panel. So Julius was talking about having emotional intelligence when it comes to your kids' emotions or to our Black youth's emotion. And he talked about that one window where the child feels this emotion, and then it's time for you to react to it, right? Or to engage with it. Can we discuss strategies for engagement? Okay, so if the youth are feeling any type of emotion, what would you say, what are some strategies or tips you would give to adults in engaging these youth? Natalie?
Well, I would say that this is probably easier said than done, but I would really work on being empathetic, right? Because just like our children and young people have experience of, you know, a spectrum of emotions, so have we. And, you know, you hear things like, you know, when I was a kid, we couldn't say this, we couldn't do this. If we would have did X, Y, Z, our parent would have reacted this way. And it's almost kind of like a blanket statement to cover up why we as adults may not have to explore with our children and youth the feelings that they're having, but it takes courage, and I know that it's easier said than done, but being able to acknowledge the feeling, and sometimes acknowledging when we also have that experience. Dr. Julius was talking about his 3-year-old son, and I have young kids, and I also understand that it would be easier for me sometimes to be like, boy, if you don't stop doing X, Y, Z, you know, like it's about to be over for you. But the reality of it is that it takes more work to onboard a child to how to express appropriately and get their needs met effectively. And part of it is being able to acknowledge sometimes when we're angry. There are times when I tell my oldest son, I know that you're angry, that you're in trouble because of your behavior, but mom was a little angry when I asked you 5 times to stop jumping off the sofa and you kept doing it, you know? So being able to show empathy through expressed emotion and acknowledge that, you know, we also as adults have those feelings, and this is how we're supposed to respond when we have those feelings. And if you misstep, be able to say, I don't care how young your kid is, and trust me, I've had to do it, is say, buddy, I'm sorry. Mama got upset and I didn't handle that right. And I should not have yelled when I said this. And it's not about you losing face or authority. It's about you modeling how to handle yourself when you are dealing with a strong emotion and maybe you didn't manage it as well, you know? And so that emotional intelligence is showing when you model how to behave, and also when you model, you know, resolution when you didn't necessarily model it correctly.
Yeah. Before we move forward, I have to just highlight one of the points that Natalie made, because that was just gold, right? So just the idea that if you apologize, or if you even identify your emotions as a parent or an adult, that does not lose face and that does not reduce your authority. It actually enhances both. Quanaisha?
Natalie touched on like so many great points. So I hope, you know, I just want you all to follow me. But she, well, first of all, Dr. Jasmine, I love what you said when you said, how do you engage? And then, because at first you said react and then you changed it to engage. And I think that's exactly what we need to highlight as quickly as, you know, you as yourself, like, you know, and being a doctor, realize like we don't react to things, you're supposed to engage. I think that's the first steps that parents need to. And Natalie said something as well about like as adults, like us realizing like, hey, I'm an adult and I feel these same emotions that my child may be feeling and everything like that. And even going back to what Destinee said, when we're speaking about emotional intelligence, if we can give examples for as an adults and our own relationships with people, when we're looking for companions, you want somebody who is emotionally intelligent enough to be able to understand you, right? You want someone who, when you're expressing that you're upset, they're not taking that as, oh, you hate me. They're not taking that as, oh, you want to fight. You're just literally saying, hey, this is why I'm upset. You know, this is what I didn't like, or this is what we can do to work towards that. So I think, and like, you know, we can go on and on about how we as adults are and the different things that we do. But if we can take our own experiences and say, hey, when I sat down with this person and had a little riff, we were able to speak to one another and come to a conclusion about how we can be better in the future and how we won't have to go down that road as companions again. And just thinking about that when you're interacting with your kids, it's like, why don't we have that same type of room and that same type of space to, you know, for you to discuss with them? And I do think it's something within parents that says, oh, you know, when I was a child, or because I'm the parent, this is what goes. And we see it a lot, because if half the things kids say now and get away with, we would probably never have been able to even think about saying to our parents. It's just like, you don't say things like that. But now the generations are different, and they need to be different because their skin may not be as tough. They may be so emotionally, you know, available that we do need to take a step outside of ourselves to say, hey, it's not about me. It's not about how I was raised. It's not about how I think it's the best way to raise my child. It's about what Ms. Jacki said. We need to meet not only our clients, but our children. We need to meet them where they are. If they're angry, and I know that as an adult, I can feel angry as well. And, you know, I may be sad. Maybe I need to listen to my child. And then also foster that conversation. Like, hey, I understand, you know, what you're feeling. I get upset as well. Like the same example that Miss Natalie gave. Like, okay, well, the same way that you get upset or you're upset now, I get upset when I tell you to stop doing something and you're not doing it. Like, kids are very smart. They're able to put 2 and 2 together. They're able to piece things together. So, you know, it's just, I think, I don't want to say stop treating them as children, but stop treating them as like emotionally as children. Their emotions matter. their feelings matter. And we just need to create a space where children feel comfortable coming to their parents, not being afraid, you know, of discipline and different things like that. Like, oh, if I tell my mom or dad how I feel, I'm going to get in trouble, or she's going to be upset with me, or, you know, he's going to get upset back. Like, we need to just stop that. So parents need to, when engaging with their children, need to understand, if I as an adult can feel this and understand these emotions, then my child can too. And in order for my child to grow into be a healthy adult, they need to learn how to express that to them. And it really starts with how you engage with them, you know, coming with that same type of empathy and understanding that you would someone else who you want to be a companion.
Yeah, Quanaisha, I think those are all awesome points. I think it's important to see that these interactions, though they may be small as youth, they also affect how they develop into adults. And so by teaching them and socializing them into healthy emotional expression, that's going to help them as adults to have healthier relationships. And also as parents, if we create this space of expression, that if something goes wrong when they're older, they feel more comfortable to approach you. I mean, I'm making an assumption because I'm not a mental health professional, so y'all are welcome to say, nah, you're wrong. But my assumption is that as they're older, then they're more likely to approach you if there's an issue, and then you can handle it as a healthy parent-child relationship or parent-adult-child relationship. Destinee?
Sorry, no, yeah, I would agree with pretty much everything you were saying. I think it is important for you to start talking about emotional expression with your kids early on, so that, again, when they start to get older and they transition into adulthood, they do have that, you know, that feeling like, oh, I do remember I'm always allowed to, you know, come back and express myself to my mom or my dad or, you know, my caregiver. Those are very important because, you know, when you're experiencing a hard time, or, you know, you have a big decision to make, or, you know, things like that, you don't want to fear discipline, like Quanaisha said, or you don't want to just fear this feeling that your parents might not accept you, or, you know, anything. You just want to have that open line of communication with your kids to help them even as they go on into their adulthood with other relationships, because this, again, kind of touches on like attachment styles. So I won't get too deep into attachment styles, but attachment styles are, you know, formed at early ages, and they really follow us throughout our lives, and they kind of like shape how we engage in our future relationships with our children, with our, you know, partners, with our friends, even. So kind of making sure that your children have secure attachments with you, that they're able to feel, you know, they're able to kind of like go and explore the world and, you know, still feel like they have that safe space with you, is really important.
Thank you. So far we've been discussing one of the main problems of voice and expression. And so a few of the strategies you mentioned were having courage when it comes to approaching these conversations, having patience in these conversations, having empathy for not only your own feelings, but also the feelings of our Black youth, developing a space to communicate, which is going to be useful currently and also in the future. And then also socialization, so mimicking expressions and mimicking emotions and mimicking healthy emotions and expression. All right, so what I want us to move forward and talk a little bit about, what if our Black youth have issues that we as parents aren't able to handle, right? So if we're thinking about traumas, little T traumas and big T traumas, like we mentioned earlier, what happens if this is beyond us? Like something happened and I can't help. Can any of our panel members talk about the usefulness and the necessity of mental health and tapping into our mental health resources? Can we start with Natalie?
So I think that part of it is you know, just kind of overwhelming the stigma of mental illness in our society and in our communities. And I think that that is starting to happen just because the environments are becoming really pressured with a lot of challenges. And so there are people who are considering a mental health intervention that probably would have never considered it otherwise. When parents are in a place where they see that their efforts to help their child may not be adequate to actually, to actually have the outcome of mental and emotional health that they like, that's the time when we start looking into the community for mental health resources. That can start in the school system, where you reach out to the school's counselor where your child goes to school, express some of your concerns, and see if they can provide some interventions, albeit acute interventions, for your child that might help them find some emotional and mental relief. More extensively would be to reach out into the community for therapeutic intervention. And there's a lot of ways to do that, and there's a lot of different styles of that. But one of the things that I will express and encourage is that you make sure whoever you reach out to is a licensed mental health professional. There's a lot of programs out there that consider themselves mental health, but they do not on staff to actually help your child. So one of the questions you ask when you reach out to any program or any entity is, do you have any licensed clinical mental health professional on staff that would see my child? Once you find a space that does have that clinical component in the program, or reaching directly to a clinician in your community, then I would commit to it. And I would talk to my child about it like it was one of the best resources that you could possibly give them. That would be my initial, my initial step into providing resources for my child outside of the home.
Awesome. And Julius?
Yeah, so I mean, transparency is key as well. All right, so I think in the onset of any issue happening where the parent doesn't feel suitable or capable to help their kid, I think some transparency with the self is appropriate. So, am I capable of helping my kid, or will I do more harm trying to muddle through some things that I may not even understand? Right. So having that transparency with the self, and then with the kid as well. Listen, I acknowledge, I notice, I see, I understand any one of those words. I can, I've witnessed you experiencing these things, right? And you kind of have to be open about it. So I experience you feeling sad more often than not. I experience you, with throwing something like cutting, or being angry more often than not, yelling more often than not, whatever it is. Because that acknowledgement actually validates the kid's emotions, right? It's like, this is actually happening, right? And then there needs to be some agreement of, yeah, this is happening, and I do feel this, and here's where I feel it in school, and when I'm with my friends, and when I'm outside. Oh, okay, I noticed that too. Because when we were at, your grandparents' house, I noticed this. Yeah. What do you think we can do about that? Like, what do you want to do about it? Because I have some ideas, right? So something like that is a very easy way of having that conversation. And I use the word easy lightly, right? Because it's super tough to do, right? But it's a nice segue into, here's what I think is a possibility for us to get some help. And the word "us" needs to be used there, because that's a buy-in for the kid as well. This is a process for all of us. And I'll be with you throughout this whole journey, through thick and thin.
Yeah, so far we've had a few suggestions about school counseling, making sure that when you are reaching out for mental health, you're looking for a licensed clinical mental health professional. And then also having transparency to acknowledge what you're seeing, the behavior, and that allows you to validate the child's experience. We're going to go up to Destinee, and then we're going to come down to Ms. Jacki.
So I also think a lot back to my experiences in my master's program. I actually interned at a anger management and substance abuse counseling program. And a lot of the issue that happened with the kids were that, that they may have came in because they might have had a charge for having possession of some type of substance, but they might not have a substance abuse problem, but they are, using, and this might be a symptom, trauma, response or something like that. So getting to talk to them a little bit deeper was difficult. One thing that I got some buy-in to, which is a strategy I suggest for parents to kind of like get your kids to buy in, because their motivation plays a huge role in how successful their outcome will be. So if they're coming into the program and they really don't want to be there and they feel like they're being forced to, or something like that, it's actually pretty you're not going to get the same outcome that you would get if they were actually into the material and actually engaged with it and receptive to what their therapist is trying to teach them. So I think that some buy-in, a strategy that I used when I was working, was actually using celebrities. So a lot of celebrities now have been highlighting mental health. G Herbo, I'm not sure if everybody knows him, but he is a rapper. He has launched a mental health type of initiative in the Chicago area. He's with the Chicago rapper Chance the Rapper. I know Charlamagne the God speaks a lot about it on Breakfast Club. I'm not sure if you guys know who Summer Walker is, but she's gotten pretty transparent. And there's actually a YouTube therapist on YouTube. I think his name is Dr. Singh, and he interviews a lot of celebrities, and it gets the children to have some buy-in. So I use them.
Yes. I think, Destinee, that was an excellent point of allowing the child to have the buy-in. And also with Dr. Austin, when he expanded on, like, saying, let's do this together. And that is what I've done with some of the youth. Let's do this together. How do you feel about this? Validating the kiddo and letting them know, okay, I see where you're at. But when you're in that, like, and then they say, well, I'm not crazy, I'm not this, I'm not that. Okay, so what is crazy to you? Identify that. How does that look to you? Okay, and then you can role play some things, allow that individual to role play. But in the meantime, in the between time, you want to allow them to show them, okay, is this person, do they have a fingerprint clearance card? What are the expectations, to make sure you're safe? I want to make sure you're safe as your mom. Wait, like Miss Natalie pointed out, are they licensed? Who are they supervisor? Because with the things that we're dealing with in the world today, some people, they can portray a therapist and they can put on all these different hats and, I'm a mentor, and they're going with the Boy Scouts and everything else. And we find out several years later, this have taken place with our child. We don't know why, So it's very important. And I feel that when we allow the child to collaborate with us and show them what we're looking for and allow them to seek and look, they'll be more comfortable and acceptable with going to treatment or receiving help to handle that issue.
Awesome. Quanaisha?
I just agree with everything that has been said so far, and I just wanted to highlight the importance of parents buying in just as much as the child as well. I love the examples that Destinee gave as far as how she connects with, or she connected with the children that she was working with before. But I think it's also important for parents to connect just as much, because a lot of times parents, may think, oh, I have to do what's best for my child and, get them the best help that I can, which is, of course, something that's very beneficial for them. But the parents need to buy in as well, because a lot of that behavior may be, whatever helps the child, that may be reinforced when they get home, or all that work may be unraveled depending on how the parent, sets up that type of environment. And I can use the example of just statistics when it comes to ADHD. a lot of times when a child has ADHD, you would go back and realize that their parents also have ADHD, because a lot of their behaviors are being mimicked by the child. And it's like a lot of times through studies, therapists were seeing like, okay, we would make so much progress, but then it wouldn't really seem like progress at all. And that's because the parent is still cultivating that type of environment that will just have a kid, take certain steps back once they get home. So the same tactics that Destinee was using to help her children, I feel like if even parents can come up with something, I know it might not be as superficial as, oh, let's use your favorite entertainer, but sometimes it might be. And I just think we also have to, just get a little bit creative in how we deal with parents as well, because we're trying to tackle a lot of intergenerational trauma, meaning that the parents still have some trauma that they haven't healed from. So, just being creative with the way that we interact with children and with parents, so it doesn't feel as if it's a death sentence. It doesn't feel as if they're being punished or scrutinized in any way, because that's how it can come across, when you're trying to give parents different tips on how to deal with their children. Some people may feel like you as a professional are telling them, oh, I don't know what I'm doing as a parent. And, it can just become a battle in so many ways. So I just feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But as long as we're all open to those different things and, meeting people where they are and just telling people that it's like normal and it's healthy for them not to know everything or to have gotten something wrong. And, just having that transparency as well. Of course, it's a limit of transparency that we can have as professionals, but just creating that type of environment so they know that they're safe, that they're not being scrutinized and judged. And I just think that'll go a long way, essentially, in the long run for the child. So like you said, Dr. Jasmine, the child can still grow up and feel as if they have someone to turn back to that, won't lead them down a wrong path. And then that same type of intergenerational trauma is occurring.
Awesome. Quanaisha, that was an amazing job of just summarizing the points towards the end. Like, you basically just did my job. So I appreciate you for that. So now that means we can just move forward a little bit. So what we've talked about recently, in this last portion of our discussion was intervention. So school counseling, licensed clinical mental health professionals, transparency, buying when it comes to celebrities, meeting our youth where they are. So I want to move forward a little bit and discuss another mental health issue, which is something that we may unintentionally do with our youth. So I think one other issue is the pressures we may put on our youth, the pressures we may put on our children. And when I say pressures, I mean expectations. So can we discuss some of these expectations, some of these pressures that we may have? I'm going to start with Julius, because we were actually having this conversation a few hours ago about how he sees pressures in his older adults when they're coming into therapy, and so how these pressures began as youth. So if we can come up with a few ideas of what are some of these pressures we may put on our youth that lead to mental health issues. Julius?
Yeah, so I'll be real quick, just mindful of the time. I mean, there's this, from what I see clinically currently, there's this timeline that everyone that I, come in contact with is on. And the timeline is, I'm 17, 18, I just started college. I need to be here for 4 years, no longer than that. After I got to get a degree that allows me to either go to graduate school or to make at least 6 figures right out of school, right? And you go to graduate school and you either become what? Doctor or lawyer, right? Or you become like an entrepreneur, right? So those are like the big 3. Right. And then you get married, at around 25, you have your first kid at around 27, you buy your first home by 30, you travel the country, you travel the world, maybe in between that. And then that's life. Like, and then if you fall off that timeline, it creates this insurmountable amount of pressure, of like, I will never get this time back. So if you have to stay in school 1 year, like, 1 extra year, then it creates this almost rut, like you're digging yourself in a hole, that you'll never get out of, which can just, cycle itself through every relationship that kids have.
All right, Quanaisha?
Yes. I also think that just living in the time that we are in now, a lot of the pressures may also come from social media and the things that other people see. Technology, of course, has advanced in so many ways. And I think not only, does it come from our households, because we see like a lot of adults and a lot of parents, of course, wanting the best for their children, will push their children just simply to do the best that they can and be the best that they can, not realizing that sometimes they may be trying to live vicariously through their children, like the things that they couldn't accomplish and the things that they couldn't do. So sometimes, of course, parents wanting the best for their child, it may sometimes come across as, okay, I have the weight of the world on my shoulders and I just have to be and do the best that I can. And with that mindset already set, you now are on social media and you're seeing people younger than you, people your same age, maybe just a little bit older than you, living what seems as if it's a luxurious type of life. Like they're traveling, you're doing everything that Dr. Julius just named. It's like they have that in tenfold. So it does put a lot of pressure mentally on people because again, envy and jealousy and things of that nature are all like normal emotions for people to have. And when that starts to seep in, it starts to make people feel as if they're not good enough or that they're not amounting to everything. And that can be, tragic as well, because they're not even realizing that everything is not projected onto social media. The lows, what doesn't feel and look good. Not too many people are as transparent about speaking about that and not realizing that it does have an adverse effect on the people who are watching them.
And also, I think that in the Black and Brown communities, I think we associate certain successes as the gateway to equality, where we may not experience some of the racial, classist, sexist experiences that people without those accomplishments are destined to experience. I think we, if we're not careful, like Quanaisha said, we equate certain successes with I want you to have a better life than I have is something that we've probably heard or have said to our own kids, which at the core is there's some truth to that, but also it's connected to, like Quanaisha said, some unfulfilled goals in our own life that we now are trying to accomplish through our children. And so it puts a lot of pressure on them to fulfill us by accomplishing goals we did not personally accomplish. And also, especially in our communities where, dealing with inequality and racism is just part of the experience, there is a misaligned understanding that sometimes with the life that Dr. Julius kind of mapped out, comes this kind of like this ticket to this equality that we may not experience otherwise. And so we start feeling the pressure to validate ourselves through our accomplishments and our status in life and our class and certain certain accolades that we expect to get because we were able to do certain things, and we find ourselves not having the ability to feel fulfilled and validated if we don't accomplish those things. So that does cause a lot of pressure on our young people. And I said the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The road to therapeutic intervention could also be paved with those good intentions because they provide this level of pressure that we, most people can't sustain under,
Destinee?
I wanted to add one more thing. I seen a meme actually talking about the pressures that people are feeling right now, and it was a really funny meme, so I wanted to kind of describe it because I can't share it. So it's pretty much like, a person sitting there and they got their eyes closed and they're trying to relax, and it says, trying to relax, and then it has people whispering behind them, and it's like capitalistic definitions of worth, productivity with no goal, monetizing my hobbies, and the thought that you should do something. And I think that that's really relevant for what we're talking about, especially in this climate right now, because, you know, you even got kids starting businesses and, you know, doing lip gloss things. It's like, you know, you get your money, how you get your money, turn your hobby into a lifestyle type of thing. And it's always kind of, you know, you'll realize how much your hobby, you'll lose some interest in your hobby, trying to monetize on it sometimes. Not all times, of course, you know, you do want to love what you're doing, but that, you know, that does add a little bit more pressure than what you already had. So I think that these things all kind of cause some pressures for our youth, for our children. I think that, again, like going back to Quanaisha's point, I think that looking on social media is really kind of stressful for them. You know, comparison is all joy. So just thinking about that helps me kind of put in context what type of pressures our youth are experiencing, if this is something that, you know, adults joke about too at the same time.
You know, we have had an amazing conversation. All right, what I want to do is I want to give us a few resources. So if you're tuning in, grab a sheet of paper, grab your cell phone, put it in your notes real quick. I'm going to give you 6 different phone applications that are mental health resources. After that, I'm going to summarize the problems and the solutions that we discussed today. And then I'm going to give the panelists an opportunity to give you 2 strategies when it comes to fostering better mental health in our youth. Okay, so first, here are those 6 applications. Okay, so the first one is SUN, and that stands for Sisters United Now. And these are all phone applications that are for our Black youth, or at least for marginalized populations. So the first one is SUN, SUN, Sisters United Now. The second one is The Safe Place. Once again, the second one is The Safe Place. The third one is Therapy for Black Girls. That one is Therapy for Black Girls. The fourth is the Yellow Couch Collective. The Yellow Couch Collective. The fifth one is Melanin and Mental Health. Melanin and Mental Health. And 6 is National Deaf Therapy. National Deaf Therapy. So I'm going to go through those once again really quick so you can check out your list. Once again, these are all apps for your phone that are for mental health when it comes to Black youth or marginalized populations. And if you don't get this list right now, don't worry, we're going to post this on our social media platforms. And this conversation is also recorded so you can go back and replay it. But once again, those apps are Sisters United Now, The Safe Place, Therapy for Black Girls, Yellow Couch Collective, Melanin and Mental Health, and National Deaf Therapy. And I also know that we have multiple other mental health platforms that you can subscribe to and on different applications. But I wanted to highlight those 6 because those are specific to marginalized populations and especially our Black youth. Okay, so this evening we've discussed 3 main problems. Those 3 main problems were voice and expression, anxiety, and recognizing traumas. So we had 2 different routes for solutions. The first route was individual. So as parents, what can we do? The second route is for mental health interventions when these issues just become beyond us. So the first route, which is individuals, is having courage when it comes to these conversations, having patience, empathy, creating these spaces for communication, and also socialization. So that means mimicking your expression so you can teach your children, I was going to say students, you can teach your children or Black youth, you can teach them how to express healthy emotions. And then when these issues, when we need intervention, mental health intervention, we have school counselors. Make sure you ask for licensed clinical mental health professionals. Make sure you have transparency whenever you're trying to get your youth into mental health counseling. So that includes acknowledging, witnessing, seeing, and experiencing what you're seeing when it comes to their emotions. And then having buy-in, so trying to motivate them to go into mental health. And that can include giving them great examples of celebrities or entertainers that are in mental health or that are in counseling or other mental health services. Okay, so we're going to go around in the same order we did to introduce ourselves. So we're going to start with, I believe, Julius, Dr. Austin, my brother. We're going to start with him. And I asked the panel to give us 2 strategies or 2 key takeaways when it comes to bettering the mental health of our Black youth? Julius?
So awareness. So, and there's two things that goes along with awareness. And those are going to be my 2 points. So one, awareness of the self. So, Dr. Jasmine mentioned engagement versus reaction. And I think understanding the self, understanding your own feelings and emotions and the way that you communicate it, being aware of that helps you to engage with the kid, with your kid or with the kids that you work with. And it helps you to be able to model the way to express those emotions. So that's one. And then the next thing is the awareness of the child's emotions. So awareness of the fact that they're not fully formed adults who can express themselves like you can, right? They express themselves through the medium of other things, like Miss Jacki mentioned, like play therapy. They express themselves through play. They express themselves through hand signals or kind of backdoor vocalizing of. So it takes a lot of time to be able to process emotions with the kid. So those two things.
I think that I think that we as adults, caregivers, pediatric focused professionals, parents, I think that advocacy is one of the strategies that we have to be able to commit to wholeheartedly. Be your child's biggest advocate. If you're a professional, advocate for that child the way you would want someone to advocate for your child. And be willing to do the work to find the best resource for that child, I think goes a long way. And the other thing is to be able to champion them when they're doing the work. I know that it's not as visual a work as, say, planting flowers in the garden. However, you're watching somebody physically, basically, that experience. It's taking barren land and finding the fruitfulness of that land and helping this child grow and strengthen into this beautiful life garden that replenishes the earth around him. So just being able to champion the child when the child is receiving therapeutic intervention, just being their biggest supporter. And even if you don't understand everything that's going on, just know that the work that is being done will help your child become a well-rounded individual. And that ripple effect can positively impact your home and your family. So be able to champion that. Be willing to seek help for yourself, because we talked about modeling behavior. And if you are really struggling, and trust me, your children are very, very astute, and they pick up on when you are struggling. If you're able to show them what it looks like to ask for help and receive help, it will also help them be more successful in their endeavor to get the emotional assistance that they need. So those are the two strategies that I would put in play, and expect the best. Expect the best.
So some strategies I would suggest, and some key takeaways that I had were to ask questions and be transparent with your children. Again, they are learning from you, and also being able to offer comfort and give your child space to share their feelings. Promoting this kind of like healthy perspective on emotions is really, really important. Because having a healthy perspective on emotions can really help you kind of build and strengthen your interpersonal skills, your self-awareness, just your emotional regulation in general. So I think that those are really important for parents to consider.
There are so many great takeaways. I'm just trying to figure out what else to add. But I think I would say for people to remain open to change and just know that, it's going to be uncomfortable. It may not always be easy. It doesn't always feel good. And those are things that we have to become comfortable with. We have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable and knowing that the change and the end goal that we want to meet is more important and more fruitful than that moment of fear or that moment of being uncomfortable that some people may feel. And I would just say, like, something I like to live by is like 5 steps forward and 10 steps back is still 5 steps forward. So just knowing that, you know, you can be doing so well, or your children can be doing so well, and you can foster a great bond and things can be going so great. But you know, you might get knocked back down. Some bad things may happen, but that doesn't mean that all the work that was done, you know, goes down the drain now. It's just another way for you to, I guess, reinforce all of those things that you've learned, because it's so easy to do things when nothing is going wrong. And it's so easy to be so confident and be hopeful when everything is perfect. So those challenges and those trying times are just moments sent to you to, you know, reinforce everything and redefine that, and, you know, just prove to yourself and to your child that, you know, this is something that you all can do together, and there's still progress being made. So those are 2 things that I would say, you know, and give everyone, not only just when they are interacting with their children, but just as a person, and, you know, for parents or individuals themselves.
All right, Miss Jacki. You're muted, Miss Jacki. Can you unmute your microphone?
I don't know.
There we go.
Okay. My 2 takeaways would be modeling positive behavior. I think that is very important as being in the healthcare field. Modeling positive behavior, it saved my life. As I said in the beginning of the panel, I'm a positive product of the system. So being born into foster care and being in the system and growing up in the system and going through trauma, the teachers, the counselors that modeled positive behavior gave me something to look forward to. Let me know that there's possibility for change and that, you know, there are good people out there. The second thing was validation. Validation is one of my takeaways, because at all times, I always believe in validating the client, validating your child, hearing them. That's a part of hearing the child, listening to them, letting them know that I hear you. And what can we do to get past this and move forward? So those are my 2 takeaways: modeling positive behavior and validation. Thank you. I enjoyed you guys.
Thank you so much to our lovely, amazing panel members. We had Miss Jacki, Quanaisha, Destinee, Natalie, and Julius. So thank you all for sharing your expertise, your experiences, and also your testimonies as well. So I would like to also thank More Than a Protest, who was a partner, who partnered with VIPLA. And of More Than a Protest, I'd like to personally thank our executive director, which is Dr. Erica Waller, the creative director, which is Kimani Anthony, the public relations director, which is Jalaisha Simpson. And also I'd like to direct you to their website, which is morethan-a-protest.org, as they have some awesome upcoming events, one which is coming up soon, and it's the March on Washington. I'd also like to personally thank you for tuning in for another Strategic Sunday with me, Dr. Jasmine Austin. I look forward to joining you again. And I want to leave you with just a little quote. Of course, we know the cliche of the children are our future, but today you hopefully learn a few strategies to ensure that our future has healthy mental health. Thank you for joining us.